about this love, about this, about this love, about this love. How you guys doing today? You are tuning into About This Love podcast with myself, Dale, and my lovely wife, Charel. Say what's up to my peoples.
Hey.
How you guys doing today? Sorry we took a 2-week break. It was much needed. I wish we could have gave you guys the heads up first, but sometimes life happens. So hey,
it was a 2-week break.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks. Before we begin, I was just want to remind you guys to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and you can find our podcast anywhere where podcasts can be found. And we are actually now on Pandora, so you can actually find us on Pandora. And once Amazon launches their podcast brand or site, we'll also be on there as well. So look forward to us on Amazon. For today's topic, I really wanted to talk about culture, like our individual family culture and how that can be either constructive or destructive once you get married. I don't think all of it is destructive, but I think some of it can be destructive, Like oftentimes, when you're young, you don't realize that the way your mother and father interact may be just the way that they interact. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad. You don't realize that the way that they interact, it may be normal to the culture of your family. And what I mean by culture, just the way we do things, like our environment, like what we see, the things our parents did in Christmas or Thanksgiving, or, on holidays or birthdays. That's just the culture. Like on a previous podcast, a while back, I explained how my wife's family is very celebratory. Like every time it was someone's birthday, they had a birthday party. Whereas, my family, that wasn't really a part of our culture. Yes, we had birthday parties every 2-3 years. Yeah. But it wasn't like every year at everyone's birthday. You know what I'm saying? So that's just to kind of give an example. But what I wanted to say was that I was thinking last night, I was actually reading the scriptures. And I was thinking about culture and just how oftentimes when we are new to marriage, and I was thinking about my own marriage, me and my wife, when we first got married, how a lot of things that cultural-wise, it had to go. And what I mean by that is, like I was saying before, when you are young and you see your mother and father interact, you may not realize that that's just the way that they interact. That's just the culture of your family that your mother and father had agreed upon.
Like, I don't think it was agreement. Maybe that's how they figured that they can function.
Well, what I mean is, like, for instance, I know some people in my family were stay-at-home moms. That's all they did. When the father came home, he had a hot meal on the table waiting for him. The kids were well kept and the house was clean. I know some people in my family were both the mother and the father worked. So it's like, whoever cooked dinner that specific day was whoever got home first. So it was like they shared the burdens together. But that was the culture of one person's family versus another family. Like I said, that's another culture. So what I mean by that is oftentimes when we get married, we don't take the time to consider how the culture of our family will mesh together with the culture of our spouse's family. And oftentimes there will be things in my wife's family, within her culture of her family, that they did that may not go together well in our marriage. And there may be things that they did that may be able to go well in our marriage, and vice versa. But sometimes I feel like, at least for me and my wife, I feel like we did our best to discuss these things, and we kind of knew from just watching each other what the interaction was, and we kind of went from there. But even once we got in our marriage, we realized that we had to stop, pause, and reassess things and kind of verbally discuss how things were going to change.
Hold on. So can you give an example, like, as far as the culture of someone's household, like how somebody interacted with one another, how they responded? I mean, I think it goes even deeper than a celebration, which I know you know that, but for our listeners, I think that we should kind of break it down. When we say culture or the culture of someone's family, it's like, if you were raised to see like your mother, your father, I don't know, never argue, then you might think that when you're married, you're never supposed to argue. And the same with just the way that the children were raised, like the way that you were raised. You might have the mindset of like, okay, I want to grow up and not treat my children the way that I was treated. But naturally, because, you haven't had any other examples, you would naturally kind of go and raise your children the same way.
By default.
Yeah, by default, because you haven't replaced it with any other with any other ways. You haven't seen any other ways. And then, you marry someone who lets their children run the house, or they've seen, they've been brought up in an environment where the children run the house and run the parents. And so they think that that's how the children are supposed to be. And then you guys go and have children, and your way of raising children clash.
Yeah, like one of the things I didn't really want to touch on it, but I will. I was gonna say I know some family members. It was common, like growing up as kids. It was common that mom and dad would get into a fist fight. Like that was common. Like every time we went to these family members' houses and something popped off, they ended up getting into a fist fight. And like for me, as a kid, I became accustomed to seeing that. So for the individuals in that household who grew up with that on a regular, you know, if a girlfriend or wife say something crazy, they might just smack her. That's just, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that that's right. It's wrong.
Yeah.
But again, just an example how things that we see and I guess just are witness to growing up in the culture of our family. Again, just an example how some things that we see can be either constructive or destructive. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you know, it makes me think about trauma. People might not realize that these things were traumatic. This is actually normal, you know? It's like, remember that one year, the first year we were married, and our lights were cut off, right? And so I was just kind of like, oh, what's a summer without, you know, having a couple days with your lights off? Now, for me, there was a portion of like life. I feel like in the early part of like my childhood, there were so many tornadoes that happened.
Oh, I think I was going to say something else.
Oh, no. I just remember like there were so many natural disasters. We had like huge snowstorms. We had huge tornadoes. And so, like, our power would be out. Like, I remember just kind of sitting in the basement. We all got to be quiet. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, this is the norm. Like, we got
to be quiet.
I don't know. I feel like it's a Southern thing. Like, they're just like, oh, well, you know, when a storm is passing by, the Lord's speaking. So you got to sit quietly, you know, and so your house won't get destroyed by the storm. So, I mean, that's what, you know, that's another thing. That's what we were told to do. And I mean, maybe over, you know, if you're in a Midwestern state, you're told to go hide in a bathtub or go, you know, run out to the dugout. And so, I mean, that's something that people have to deal with. I know, like, for us, we also dealt with a lot of fires, a lot of house fires. Just
I was like 2.
Nah, we had one too many. Either way, they were one too many.
But that's not really the culture of
no,
listen.
This is, I'm not saying that the fires are the culture. What I'm saying is my response to safety and the way that I do things. Like sometimes you'll say, oh, you're being fearful, but I'm like, no, I've been through too many things and that's my response. Like, you know, anyone who knows me and who's been around me where we're either moving, unpacking, or helping somebody move, or even moving the house around, you know, I'm just kind of like, don't ever block your exits, you know, and I get really serious about it. And I'll start moving stuff probably back into the way, like back out of the way of our exit, but back into the way of like where we just moved it from. But it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, but I grew up as a child. It was kind of like, you know, like I don't, you know, I might not have realized that was trauma.
Yeah, but I understand that, but I'm trying to follow. But trauma is not. I mean,
what I'm saying, what I'm saying is sometimes if someone grew up in an abusive or even, you know, watched their parents manipulate one another.
So are you saying? Okay, I want to understand what you're saying. So are you saying? I guess as it relates to trauma and culture, that sometimes people grow up in households where they don't deal with trauma, and that's the culture of their family. Is that what you're saying?
Yes and no. So what I'm saying is sometimes people grow up watching traumatic things happen, right? And so then they form a response to the traumatic event, whether it be, you know, mom beating up on dad or vice versa, or, you know, mom having multiple different partners come in.
But that's not.
But listen. And so because, you know, I grew up with that, now I'm married and I might think it's okay to, you know, I mean, if my husband beat on me, or I may think it's okay if, you know, my husband talks to me a certain way, or if someone might think it's okay if their wife is demeaning to them and to the children because the way that they grew up, and they might not realize that that was something traumatic. And so that's why they're accepting it. And the cycle kind of continues.
So it goes back to what I said then, when I said that just the part of a person's family would be not dealing with trauma, or not dealing with I guess, well, yes, trauma, but if situations kind of come up, kind of pretend like it never happened. I mean, would you agree?
I mean, yes, I'm agreeing to that, but also too, I just feel like some people might not even realize that it's dysfunction until they start to build up their own family. You know, they're building up their own nucleus with their husband or with their wife and their children. And it's like, oh, you know what? I respond this way, and or I do this and that. And because that becomes your culture. Like every time, you know, the child brings home a bad report card, it's like you going off on them instead of like, you know what, I need to get them tutoring or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So that does become the culture, because then it's like, well, they got upset, so I snatched away all the toys for Christmas. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, even though that might not be something that you and I do, but that's things that people deal with, and they go through that with their spouses. Because, you know, that's a part of you're building those memories with your children, with your spouse. And so when those things come up, you don't realize that every Christmas that come around, it may be a sore spot for your spouse or your children, because, you know, that's how your parents responded while you were a child. And so then now that you're an adult, you snatching away toys too. And you know what I'm saying? You don't even realize why you're doing it.
It's interesting because I was talking to somebody, and I was asking them about the person that he married and why did he marry her, and he said, well, it's you know, in culture we marry within our race, and I was like, oh really? I was like, so you couldn't have brought home a black woman then, right? and you know, and we both laughed and chuckled about it, and he said, you know, well, I've dated black women before, you know, in the past, you know what I'm saying? But it's interesting. And I mean, me personally, I don't find nothing wrong if you're white and want to marry somebody white, that's cool. If you're black and want to marry somebody black, that's cool. If you're Asian and want to marry somebody Asian, that's cool, man. I don't really get into those kind of details. I mean, I don't really care. I don't really think it's important. As long as you love the person and they love you, that's fine. But I was thinking about a scripture. I believe I think I was reading the passage from Luke, and Jesus was talking to the Pharisees, and he says you uphold the traditions, you know, of your fathers at the cost of, you know, disobeying God or kind of ignoring the law of God, if I had to paraphrase it. And I was thinking about that, because it's like oftentimes how many things do we do within our own culture, how we kind of exclude people who are not like, you know, if I'm from Carolina and y'all don't from Carolina, you know, I don't want to be around you, or from African, you know, African, I don't want to be around you or be married to you. That's not really of the Lord, you know what I'm saying? I'm saying that kind of Lord. Just thinking about how oftentimes when we come into marriage with our spouse, there's things that we have to really walk out. I know for us, a lot of things were very, very challenging, and we even had to get counseling on, because there's things that you don't realize that are so ingrained in you that cannot exist in the context of your marriage, but you are like so hell bent on doing it that you don't realize it's actually destructive. I was thinking about years ago when I first read John chapter 8. Jesus had gotten into a dialogue with some of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Jesus was like, well, I think he was talking about, well, you know, he was talking about God. He said, well, you know, I'm doing my Father's work. You know what I'm saying? And I guess, we're like, you know, but you wouldn't know that because you don't know my Father. You know what I'm saying? And they kind of were like, well, Abraham is our father, you know, and Jesus was like, well, if Abraham was your father, you would receive me, because, you know, Abraham heard from God the Father, which is my Father. So, in a long story short, he actually ended up saying, you know, no, you're sons of your father, the devil, and not calling anybody the devil, but oftentimes I just realized like how much we can be so hell bent on our culture of our family that we actually begin to do things that are very destructive. Now, the Pharisees, I don't, maybe they wasn't trying to be disrespectful towards God, but nevertheless, they were, you know, and I think, you know, in the context of marriage, when we come into a marriage hell bent on, well, this is the way my family do it, this is how I'm going to do it. And your wife or husband may be like, well, I don't like that, you know, or that's kind of jacked up, so I don't want to do that, you know what I'm saying? I can't rock with that, you know what I'm saying? So it's just highlighting ways that when we get married, yes, it's okay to bring some of the things that we did growing up for both of us, but some things we have to kind of discard and do something new, do something fresh for our own existing family, you know?
Yeah, I have an example. It's like when we first got married, you wanted me to make you a cheesecake, and you were just like like every time I would be in the kitchen making
the pudding.
No, it was cheesecake. It was like a cheese. Oh, probably it was banana pudding. Fine.
Banana pudding.
Okay. So Dale wanted me to make him this banana pudding, right? So he would come into the kitchen and be like, last time you made it, it was good, but the way my mama made it, it tasted really good. Like, I like the way that she made it. And I was just sitting there thinking, like, I am not your mother. So then, like, he would go on to tell me, yeah, my mama would, put the bananas in and then put the pudding in and then stir it up. And I'm just like, well, if you know the recipe, why don't you go and make it? And he's like, no, because, like, that's the way my mama made it, but I want you to make it the way my mama made it. And it would burn me up.
I don't think that was really. I don't think that was.
That's why you laughing.
I'm laughing because I remember saying that, but I'm also saying, like,
hold on.
The problem that you had was that you didn't want a little critique, and nothing wrong with a little critique.
Dale, if it tasted good, it tasted good. But if you wanted your mama's, go to your mama's house and get it. No, but I mean, I think one day I will try to, like, attempt his mother's recipe. But at the same time, it's like, I was kind of insulted because I'm just like, you say you like mines. And so I'm making mines how I know how to make mines, how my mama made it. Well, I didn't say how my mama made it, but basically how my mama made it. And
so you can make your mama's banana pudding, but you can't make my mama's banana pudding.
I mean, I wasn't in the kitchen. No, I wasn't in the kitchen with her, but you were, because if you could tell me the recipe, you can get in there and make it. And the problem is you want me to make it the way your mama made it, but you don't want to make it. So, yeah, I just remember that, and it just burned me up every time he said it. And I'm just like, so you're not going to eat it because it's not the way your mama made it? But of course he, still ate it. And so, I mean, like, the way that you were raised and the things that you've seen growing up, it shapes who you are. So it's not that you have to cast off completely who you are, but you have to remember that we are dying daily in marriage. And, as the days go on, like, you're expected to have a deeper death, where you might be putting your wants to the side or your desires to the side in order to, get something, to have peace with your spouse.
Yeah.
It's not that you got to completely, like, just not have any wants or needs or completely not be yourself or completely not have a personality, because that could just be, like, depressing, in marriage.
Yeah. I mean, I was just having a conversation with a buddy of mine over the phone. And one of the things we were talking about just how we grew up, because we both kind of grew up together in the same area or whatever. And one of the things that we talked about was just finances. Like myself, his family, single mother, they dealt with lack. We were having a conversation about somebody that we know. He was like, you know what, man? I think that, they wouldn't even know what to do if they got a good paying job, because they're just used to lack. They're used to not having. Even over the years, when I first got my job in the company that I work for now, years ago, I used to blow money. I used to blow a lot of money. I remember one year I went on vacation. I was single, but I was taking out like thousands of dollars at the bank at a time, just like spending that joint up like within like a day. One of the things that it showed me was that, like, you were never taught how to handle money. You were never taught, hey man, once you save, $100 this check and then invest A, B, C, and D. But the very existence of your culture is lack. You tend to treat money as if it's like, water coming out the drain, So over the years of just being a young man and having a family, I've had to manage finances. I've had to get counsel from some of my friends who are Christians, much older than me, about finances, how much money you should save each check, how much you should put aside or invest. But this is just like practical things, like things that are done practically. And oftentimes I feel like with culture, it's beautiful because we get an opportunity to examine our family history, just on a practical level, and the things we did and why we do that, and we also get to come to the table with our spouses, but like, you know what, let's keep this, but let's leave that. Like one of the things that me and my wife did, me and my wife and our son, I think it was about 2 or 3 years into our marriage, we started having movie nights on Fridays, and on movie nights we usually order some food. And we let him pick a movie, but we actually stopped letting him pick movies because he picked the same movie every Friday.
He does not always pick the same movie.
He can't pick no more movies.
Dale, he does not pick the same movie.
Yeah, he did. I've seen Finding Nemo and Dory 500 million times. I don't want to see them ever again in my life. Ever.
And and as we have more kids, he gonna have to watch it again because they ain't seen it yet. So,
but my point is that just how I appreciate the things that I see my mom and dad do, or did, when I was growing up. And some of it, as me and my wife, talked about it, jokingly, laughingly, we realized it was very destructive. It was very destructive, and vice versa. We laughed about her family and some things that they did that was good and some things that were bad. We realized it was destructive, so we had to put it down, And now we're able to take from both of our families and put together our own family and create a culture on top of each other's culture, but also kind of redefine it and begin our own culture with our family. So, my son, when he gets older and have children, and our daughter, everybody, with me and my mom and dad, my brother, we used to watch movies on Fridays and order pizza or order, food, Chinese food or whatever we order, you know what I'm saying? So it just, this episode, I just really wanted to just highlight to you guys just the importance of really sitting down with your spouse and understanding your culture, like what from it to bring into your marriage and what from it has to be dismissed from your marriage,
But I think that also happens over time. Like, because there's some things that may come up, and like I was saying earlier, you don't realize that that's actually a sore spot for you, and that was something traumatic, and then like an incident comes up, and you react a certain way, and it's almost like, whoa, like, why are you getting angry, or why are you, getting kind of tonal with me? And it's almost like until the Lord exposes that to, you and your spouse, you really don't know that it's there sometimes, and then it's kind of like, okay, you know what? I noticed that this is happening, and then you guys are going to have to shift. I think, marriage is really about being flexible with one another and
pivot.
Yeah, being able to pivot, being understanding, and ultimately, being loving towards one another and very patient. Like it's going to get hard. It's going to get difficult. It's not like, okay, let's ditch this, but keep that. Like it sounds like we're saying it like it's a checklist. And some things it probably could be a checklist. Like, okay, are we waking up on Saturday morning at 7 with the gospel music playing and cleaning the whole house? Probably not. That might be an easy, because I work Friday night kind of thing. And so, no, that's not going to cut it for me. Like on Saturday, I just want to chill. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So like just some things might be easier to let go of and make the decisions on, but just maybe even how you talk to one another and things like that. It'll take a lot of patience, especially when things start coming up, because things will come up, like life will happen. And it's almost like, let's be patient with our spouses. Well, my spouse, and you guys be patient with your spouse or your future spouse when, kind of going through and combing through, the different things. But when you see it come up, definitely pray about it. And it's like, okay, is this something we need to, go get counseling for to actually address? Because like, if there's a time where you feel like your husband just wants you barefoot and pregnant, but then you want to be that like superwoman who's like, I don't know, always traveling everywhere, there's going to be a clash if you guys don't figure it out, if you guys don't actually sit down and create like, a plan and have understanding, like one, as to why they might want to do the things that they do. Because, oftentimes we don't even realize that we're doing things out of necessity, or we're used to doing things out of necessity. But now that you're married, it's like, you know what? I don't really have to worry about that because, my wife takes over that, or my husband takes over that. And we're not in a place of lack, and we're not in a place of, where I have to worry about this and that. So I got to cover myself, Yeah.
I mean, also like I've had friends who have come from wealth, or what I say, mom and dad had some bread. And so growing up as kids, if they wanted a whip, they just went out and got it. Mom and dad paid cash money for it. But when they got married and had their own family, that wasn't the reality of their family anymore. You know what I'm saying? Him and his wife didn't have the money to go out and spend that kind of money for a car, cash money. Now, they probably got one, but it wasn't like, blow, give me that car, it's paid for, I'm done. It's like, nah, it's not always that simple. And oftentimes, like I said, it's just, just growing up and within a culture and realizing that, when I leave my mother's father's house, the resources that may have been afforded to me when I was younger are not going to be afforded to me anymore. Now, if I need to borrow some money, I'm pretty sure mom and dad let me borrow some money. That's a given. You know what I'm saying? But just understanding the culture and what can I bring from this culture and what do I have to leave behind, because it is destructive, and just like coming to a reality of that. I know. I remember when my wife first got married, she wanted to homeschool, and I really wasn't cool with homeschooling. For whatever reasons. And now post COVID, we homeschooling. So it's like just quickly how things quickly change. When situations kind of arise that require our attention and require us to address it, immediately. So, were you finished, babe? I didn't want to.
Oh, I was just listening to what you were saying, and I was going to ask you. I was like, why weren't you cool with homeschooling? But I mean, it's different. You probably didn't grow up seeing people homeschool, and I was homeschooled for like a small portion of my life in high school. So I was thinking, like, if my child is anything like me, then they need that one-on-one attention. And so that's why, made some friends who homeschooled their children for like 12 plus years. And I was like, yes, that's what I want to do. And so now Dale's like, we're going to homeschool all our jokers. We're going to homeschool all of them.
I mean, also, you got to think about it. You got to think about, like, I was thinking that I wanted my kids to have the same experience that I had growing up, but I went to school down south. You know what I mean? Saying like our schools were not as big as the schools were up here. I think my graduating class had like 315.
Oh, did it?
Like 3-4 of them was black. That was it. But I say all that to say that back home, like we used to, like we just it's just different. It's just different. You know what I'm saying? It was just different. Like we could actually walk the street and not worry about getting hit by a car or walk in the woods and for a shortcut. But it's like I said up here. It's a city. It's just different. It's just different.
I mean,
like
also,
it, but it's just different.
Well, also too, like it's a different time. Like I remember, I used to stay out until the street lights came on. I'm very sure that we would not be letting our children do that in this Baltimore area.
I mean,
so
if we know, what I'm saying, we don't know then.
You said if we know? What do you mean?
No, I think about something else. I'm sorry. I was thinking about like if they're walking home from school.
No. I'm saying like when the street lights come on, because I mean, just things are different. Like people are getting snatched up, kids are getting snatched up, so things are just a little bit different. And especially with this virus, like you got to be very vigilant, and so just on different levels. And so I just think that it's a different generation because also too I think that the Lord shows us that we are people who are growing because the way that our parents raised us, we surely could not have raised our children that same exact way, even if we wanted to, even if both spouses kind of grew up in the same, I don't know, the same neighborhood and family friends or whatever. We have to raise our children up for their generation, not for our generation.
Yeah, it's different too because I remember when I was a kid, like I knew every neighbor on my street. I knew all of them. I was going to all their houses all the time, and it's like and that was just for me. That was even the elderly folks. I would just go over there and talk to them, and they would give me some glass of lemonade and some cake, and we just talk to them. But it's like back when I was a kid. Again, I knew all my neighbors. Like I lived in a relatively small town. You know what I'm saying? So everybody knew each other. My mom like go over there and give me a loaf of bread or ask for some slices of bread or give some sugar, and you could do that. I don't know nobody on my block. I mean, I talk to both neighbors on my right and left side, but I don't really know them like that. Like I don't know them.
You're not gonna send your children to their house to get some bread.
Nah.
Oh goodness.
But just to wrap it up for you guys, thank you for tuning in today to About This Love podcast. As always, you can ingest our podcast on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, all the podcasts. I can go on a list and just name them all, but they'll definitely be listed under the link. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, which is the only two places that you can follow us. Until next time, peace.